All right, y'all. It's all gonna happen at the same time. Let's see. Let's see what we got popping. Ooh wee. All right, y'all. It's all gonna happen at okay. We still going live to YouTube. So y'all, I'm gonna put on a little instrumental as we go live. We'll put on a little camera brush on you in the background. Hey. Wednesday, hip hop Wednesday. This is Women in Hip Hop Day. Yeah. Was Lil Kim, Press on You, featuring Lil Steve. And it was a little Wi-Fi. Hey, Nick. Welcome to Women in Hip Hop. And I'm so excited about it today because it's a Herstory Pages episode. And we are reading Kathy Iandoli's. Oh my God, everybody's in the house. We are reading Kathy Iandoli's God Save the Queen, the influential history of women in hip hop. So let me bring on this little image that the main we were just Earl and Honey from East California, heard the No Kings. You have remix. And maybe if you have some time on. This is actually, let me bring it down. This is actually, oh my God. Oh my God. I love y'all. Okay, so I'm actually also streaming to YouTube. And I just wanted to have a little bit of sun on me. So we got live to IG, live to YouTube, and we are cooking with gas. All right, which is what my mother used to say. She was born in like 19, I think 1919 or something. Now we're cooking with gas. So my fedefon egun. Okay, y'all ready? Oh, it's so juicy. Um, all right, so if you see me looking over here, well, maybe I should move it here so I could just look at y'all and read it at the same time. What's up, Banksy? What? We got Soul Butter, Banksy, Hannah Jimenez in the building. Okay, so welcome back to Women in Hip Hop Wednesdays. I'm Coco Peila, multi-hyphenate hip hop artist, the music midwife, and of course, your host. And we're diving into her story in the pages. Can y'all hear me good? Yeah, can hear me all right? Okay, you can hear me. Great. So we're diving into our segment, our Her Story in the Pages segment, which is a space where we read, reflect, and uplift the voices of women in hip hop through the books that tell our stories. I don't know if y'all know this, but I am such a bookworm. Books definitely were one of the things that saved my life as a young person. Hip hop saved my life, and I always had my nose in a book. I had always brought my journal, my rhyme book, everywhere I went. People who know me growing up in high school talk about me being at parties, with a reading book and my composition notebook, writing my poems and my lyrics and my raps. I was a little bit socially awkward, so that's how I coped with it. But anyway, let's get into this book because this is such a dope book. Now, listen, some folks might tell you to skip the prologue, but I am telling you right now, okay? Because people be like, skip the prologue and just get into the real chapters. No, I need you to understand. Do not skip the prologue of God Save the Queens by Kathy Iandoli. Why? Because this prologue is the key to the whole damn book. Okay. See, Kathy Iandoli is a woman in hip hop. She's a native Brooklynite. Look at me, I'm showing my West Coast feathers. She's a native Brooklynite. She's not just reporting from the sidelines. She is a hip hop head, a journalist, a novelist, a culture keeper, and one of the few people that I know of who has been consistently protecting and documenting the sacred history of women in this culture. This prologue is her personal story, but it's also our collective story. Hip hop invites each of us into the cipher from our own position in the orbit of the culture. And that personal relationship with the culture, it matters, right? And that's something that I think that's so beautiful and sacred about hip hop, which is you don't have to front like you're somebody else. You can come in like me as a bookworm, a nerd, somebody kind of obsessed with the complete liberation of all people. And as long as you rap about who you authentically are, hip hop says yes. Um, and that's my own theory. Anyway, so what Kathy shares here is not only an origin story for why this book had to be written, but also it's a heartbreaking and all too common example of the sexism, misogyny, and male domination that women in hip hop face, both behind closed doors and out in the open. And it's also an empowering story because you see how she flips it, and what she does with this, which we were just at ROI, the Millionaires Summit in Huntington Beach. And one of the things that one of the speakers was saying is, how do you deal with rejection? How do you deal with defeat? That really says a lot about us, right? It's not just that we take the defeat and let it define us, it's what we do with it. Okay, so y'all ready to get into it? I see y'all. Some folks are rocking with me. I love y'all. Okay. So for those who may not know, Kathy Iandoli has been in the hip hop journalism game for over 20 years. She's a novelist as well. She's written many books. She's working on, I think I just seen the other day that she's working on a book about Gucci Mane, or at least in collaboration with Gucci Mane. But she wrote the book about Lil Kim. She wrote a book about with Eve called Who's That Girl? She wrote Baby Girl, better known as Aaliyah, about Aaliyah. She wrote God Save the Queens. There's more pieces, but um, she's written for Vibe, Double XL, Billboard, Hip Hop DX, and more. She's not a rapper, but she is hip hop to the core. She's ahead, as I said, and she's dedicated her pen to making sure women's stories in the culture are told with care, nuance, dignity, and clarity. So again, I'm gonna say this again. If you do not have this book, make sure you get it. We're going to be working through it. And so I need you to have your own copy. All right. But also, we need to support women historians and women hip hop heads and women writers. I mean, just hello. In this prologue that we're about to read, titled A Morning in Paris, Kathy recounts a moment from 2009 when she was the urban program director at a radio station and was called a cunt on live air by a hip hop legend she admired and worked closely with. And that's just the beginning. What unfolds is a layered, gut punching story of what I would consider to be workplace violence, misogyny, silence, and white male supremacy operating under the guise of urban music. Um, Here come the ice cream trucks. Y'all know I got an autoimmune disease. I can't be doing sugar. Okay. Those days are behind me. Anyway, a boss tells her, a white man tells her, you're a white woman. You work in Black music. Who will ever respect you? And right there, amidst the sexism, the blatant disrespect, Kathy knew this story wouldn't end here. And this is when she talks about it too when she decides that she had to write this book. Okay, so now y'all have heard my oh, somebody said, Coco, let me hear you spit something to the ice cream trucks beat. Wait, Hannah. Wait, my 80s babies are definitely in the house. Okay, music midwifery. Okay, y'all are too hype, but the perfect amount. So let me get into this. And if we have time at the end, I will spit something to the birds, the bees, an instrumental, the ice cream truck if it comes back around. So let's get into it. All right. Her story in the pages, prologue, um, A Morning in Paris from God Save the Queens by Kathy Iandoli. Ready? And just so y'all know, it's page 5. Okay, so if you got your book, get your book out, turn to page 5. A Morning in Paris. It was barely 9 o'clock on Monday morning when I was called a cunt on live radio. The year was 2009, and I was working as the urban program director of a French internet radio station built on the back of a major American broadcasting company. The two French owners were named Armand and Mateo. Not really, I'm just being dramatic. And they were polar opposites. Armand would always wear a tight suit with his hair perfectly slicked back. He would fidget with the buckle on his designer belt as if to draw your attention to its price tag. He hardly made eye contact, yet when he did, it always looked as though he were calculating your worth in the event of a layoff. Mateo dressed in linen like he was headed to a yacht party in Saint-Tropez, accessorized accessorized with a permanently annoying smile. He would force conversations upon everyone within reach. Whenever I saw him, a line from Outcast's Elevators played in my head. But he kept smiling like a clown, facial expression looking silly. That's the quote, y'all. I'm trying to make sure. Look, I got on this side, I got the YouTube streaming live, and on this side, I got IG live. So I'm trying. Last time I had the book up like this the whole time. So I'm trying to make sure everybody gets access. Okay. They both claimed my position was the most important in the company since they loved hip hop, yet they would mysteriously vanish to their offices whenever rappers entered the building for interviews. Love? Yeah, right. One of the shows was helmed by a hip hop legend, one whom I had grown pretty close to in a Tony Soprano meets Dr. Melfi kind of a way. I'm clearly Lorraine Bracco's character in the equation. We'd have talks about rap's glory days, and he helped me through some pretty absurd moments when guests would come to the station and act up. Then there was the one time I nonchalantly mentioned the size of MC Hammer's package in the Pumps and Bump video to him. You can you can YouTube that to validate my claim. And the next day, he called me into the studio with Hammer on the line. Kathy has something she'd like to tell you, he said live on air. Mortified, I mumbled something about a Speedo and ran out of the studio. Cool way to assert my boss status. As I walked through the employee entrance that Monday morning, I was flagged down by the morning show's associate producer, Nix. His eyes were like saucers. We had dealt with guests smearing shit on the bathroom walls. I'll save that story for another book. And others threatening to shoot up the place. So in that moment, I was prepared for anything, everything except for, oh, excuse me, everything but cunts. Nix pulled me into his studio and said, "You need to hear this." He rewound the show to the segment before when the host, oh, oops, hold up. Okay, hold a second. He rewound the show to the segment before when the host, my Tony Soprano, asked an intern to run an errand on air. A week prior, an intern had attempted a similar task for Tony, and was almost plastered to the front of a light rail train in Jersey City for not looking both ways before crossing the tracks. So I made it mandatory that no intern could leave the premises during the day for work-related duties. They could save that train dodging business for after work. These interns were far from children, too. Grown adults attempting to break into radio through the back door of tagging music to be played on air. We all have to start somewhere, right? Best to avoid getting smeared on the road in the process. The grown ass intern nervously said no to Tony on air. No? Tony based? No? Get your manager in here. The intern manager, Alex, walked in and laid it down. Kathy said no more interns leaving the building for insurance purposes. To this, Tony barked, why do I have to listen to her? Fuck that cunt. 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 The word kept echoing in my ears. To this day, when I hear Tony's voice speaking over one of his most notoriously classic tracks, and admittedly still one of my favorite rap songs of all time, I still hear the word cunt instead. Nix stopped the tape and stared at me, trying to read my face for a reaction. I saw red, but maintained my composure since I'm prone to anger crying. Not today, Satan. Not today, Tony. I smiled at Nix and walked out of the studio. Okay, let's pause right here. So this is the moment the book opens with. Not a name drop, right? Not a timeline, not a celebration of chart-topping women. It opens with what I would consider to be workplace abuse. A woman in a leadership position being verbally assaulted live on air by a man she considered a friend and a mentor. And the worst part, this moment is not shocking to most of us, right? Um, in in there's so many things I want to say. If you've ever moved through hip hop spaces as a woman, especially a woman trying to create structure, set boundaries, or protect people, this story probably feels very familiar. This opening is a signal. This book is not afraid to start with the ugly truth. And I think that's part of what I really love about the way she writes. She writes with nuance, but also with like a very um, fearless honesty because we love hip hop culture. We love the people who built it. We love the people who still pour into it. And we're very protective of hip hop culture, but also sometimes it's hard for us to keep it real about some of the things that happen. So I appreciate the honesty that she said. Y'all didn't tell me I got a little curl popping out. Hold up. Make sure Mama Coco look good. Okay. So I love the way that it opens up because I could tell you 1,001 stories about my experience, and you turn to any woman in hip hop, and really any woman in a any male dominated industry, sectors, spaces, art forms, and we can tell you a zillion and one stories. So let's get back into it. Boom. Okay. In the main area, everyone was staring at me, especially Alex, who had just finished his own fight with Tony and his co-host. Apparently, while I was having the word cunt pummeled into my ear in Nix's studio, Alex was bravely battling Tony and his team of three who were mocking him for abiding by my rules. Alex soon had to be dragged from the studio by another radio jock so the cops wouldn't have to be called. He left the office that day and never came back. When I called Alex recently, 10 years later, to recount the story, he said to me, I remember that same day you told me this story won't end here and that it would show up in a book one day. Well, here it is. I opened the door to the studio where the show was recording. By then, Tony and his cronies were on the phone with some random employee at a nearby mall and treating them to lunch from the food court. One of the many other errands he liked demanding of the interns. With a middle finger roll and the push of a button, I took the show off the air and left white noise for all his listeners to enjoy. I pulled the heavy door back open and walked out. It was all eyes on me in the open area. I entered Armand's office where he was reclined and started and staring off into the New York City skyline. He did his best Don Draper impersonation, back turned as I huffed and puffed through the play-by-play. After I paused my rant for a reaction, he spun his office chair to face me, leaned forward, his skin paler than mine, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're a white woman." His accent layered the word woman like a dollop of mayonnaise on a French baguette. "You work in black music." With his accent, black sounded like block, but he certainly wasn't referencing Sedgwick Avenue. Then came the coup de grace. "Who will ever respect you?" With that, he walked right past me out of his office and put the show back on air. I resigned a week later. All right. Kathy's boss tells her to her face, "You're a white woman, you work in Black music, who will ever respect you?" The violence in this moment sits with me, not just because it's sexist, but because it reflects what so many women, especially as a Black woman, I feel this is what we hear in coded language every day. "You don't belong here. You're disposable. Who's going to back you up?" And despite all her qualifications, experience, and respect for the culture, Kathy gets dismissed and discarded like she was never essential. But what she says next is where the shift begins. Y'all ready? Y'all rocking with me. I see y'all. Okay, hold up. Let me see. A few months prior to taking the job, 2 days before my 30th birthday, I had been laid off from an editor position at All Hip Hop during what I now like to call the hip hop internet crash of 2009. For nearly a decade, rap websites were grabbing their proverbial dicks and rocking back and forth on their heels, so proud of themselves that they had proved print media wrong and survived while print magazines were all scrambling to stay afloat. After all, the hip hop internet needed to be filled with something other than music, since Napster put the RIAA on high alert in 99, and random postings of songs didn't qualify as hashtag content, at least back then. So I don't know if y'all was around back then, but I truly remember that shift that happened um, when Napster was like, and I didn't know any better. I think I was probably in '09. '09 was after high school, but okay, sorry. So let me stay let me stay focused. ADHD brain. Okay. So anyway, so websites were erected in hip hop's honor, full of interviews and album reviews in a place called "There's no limit to this bandwidth. Every artist is a part of rap's new real estate." It all came to a head in 2009 when web content basically switched to song clips with blurbs and stayed that way for like 5 years. Once ad dollars for the written word didn't materialize as readily as everyone had hoped, making real money was an anomaly. So we all took what we could get. Women in hip hop were slowly becoming more empowered, thanks to voices like my dear friend Kim Osario, who made history by becoming the first female editor-in-chief of The Source in 2005. By 2006, she was suing the Hip Hop Bible in a four-way suit for sexual harassment, retaliation, defamation, and gender discrimination after Source co-owner slash figurehead Raymond Benzino Scott harassed her, then threatened to ruin her name. Ironically, Kim won only for retaliation and defamation. It was a federal case, and only two women were on the jury, she tells me. But the suit sparked a fire under women not only to push harder to succeed in the hip hop business, but to speak up when something foul is afoot. In 1999, I began my journey in this weird fantasy world that we call the hip hop music industry. In high school and college, I worked at a local Sam Goody as a sales associate. Okay, cashier. I with the added important job of organizing the rap and electronic music aisles. I love this fucking part of this prologue. They both lived on the same end cap with they sorry, give me a second because I get so excited. In high school and college, I worked at a local Sam Goody as a sales associate, okay, cashier, with the added important job of organizing the rap and electronic music aisles. They both lived on the same end cap since 95% of the store was pop music, and in 1996, hip hop was far from pop. Little did we know that a year or two later, Puffy would be the first to really nudge hip hop music into the mainstream. I started that job in November 1996, two months after Tupac was murdered. The rap section was all jumbled together with the exception of one extra tab, gangster rap. That's where the bulk of the air quotes explicit music lived. Oh, excuse me, explicit music lived. Sometimes that little parental advisory tag was enough for a CD to land in that section. Thank Tipper Gore for that one. Or the obligatory gun wielding artist photo on the cover made it qualifiable as gangster rap. Think NWA and every rapper that ever inspired in Loke sunglasses. Looking back and remembering that era, that category was such a slap in the face to the state of hip hop. Like, oh, here are the dangerous selections, carefully separated and labeled as such. So I placed Death Row legend, the Lady of Rage, you know her from Afro Puffs, in the gangster rap section. Boss, a rapper from the D, was added there too. Both artists talk that talk and walk that walk. Keep on reading and you'll learn why. No, they go in the main section, my manager told me. Why? I asked. They're more gangster than any of those guys. His response was, yeah, but they're women. Eek. I immediately wanted to create a separate tab titled Women and place all the female hip hop artists in there, including the Fugees, because let's face it, Lauren carried that whole group. My manager walked away and I slid Rage and Boss back in their rightful home under the gangster rap tab. Eventually, I just alphabetized the whole section with letter tabs and threw that stupid gangster rap tab away. So this part had me cheering and fuming at the same time. Kathy's memory of working in the record store is such a beautiful example of early cultural stewardship. She noticed how the system was boxing women in and literally putting Lady of Rage and Boss in the wrong section. And she fought it quietly, strategically, and alphabetically. That's what so many of us have done in hip hop, right? We find a way to break the rules that are meant to erase us. And we rewrite the shelves, we reorder the archives, and we do it even when no one's looking. Mm, y'all better get y'all books out. Okay. It's juicy. All right. Yeah. All right. Even the Crips and Bloods compilation CDs earned their rightful place under various artists. The best part about working in a record store during the 90s and early aughts was watching hip hop transform right before my eyes, including the ascent of women in the hip hop industry. When I started working there in November 1996, I watched as Lil Kim's Hardcore and Foxy Brown's Il Nana were released back to back, igniting what would become a whole new era for female rappers. Then I was able to witness the astronomical success of the miseducation of Lauryn Hill on a brick and mortar level in August 1998, which is something I will forever cherish. I saw customers buy entire crew collections from No Limit Records to 3 6 Mafia as I casually reminded them not to forget the ladies in the mix, the Mia X's, and Gangsta Boo CDs, respectively. From there, I handed out flyers for the Roots and helped work on their all-woman concert series called Black Lily back in '99 after responding to a call for street team members on their OK Player message boards. I was hired as an in-house writer in the publicity department of a major label as a favor for one of the executives since I needed internship credits for my master's at NYU in '05. Worked at an artist management company in '08 and wrote for every publication that would let me in, some more respected than others. Hold a second, hold a second. Hold a second. So as I stood in Armand's office, my entire CV flashed before my eyes as he smugly asked who would ever respect me. I had taken that radio job out of sheer desperation, but unbeknownst to Armand and Mateo, an old friend from All Hip Hop named Jake Payne had recently brought me on board at Hip Hop DX. So I was already prepping to leave my position at the station. Cuntgate only sped up the process. And it wasn't the cunt that led to my expedited exit. I've since seen my Tony Soprano, and he's welcomed me warmly and cunt free. He was angry in that moment, but that word should never have been used. That much I get, and even revealing his name now would serve no purpose since A, I've been called a lot worse since then by everyone from music executives to internet trolls. B, as much as we try to think otherwise, no one really cares about your stories of disrespect. And O, let's not forget good old C, it could kill my career way faster than it would ever kill his. Let's be honest about that. Really, though, what got me was Armand asking, who will ever respect you? That stung the most. It's a question that lingered in my mind for far too long, a question that everyone in the industry asks herself. But in hip hop, I've now come to realize that if I keep that question omnipresent, imagine how many other women, especially women of color, the most underappreciated, must feel to varying degrees and in varying circumstances when this industry has continuously othered us in in everything from the artistry to the business side. This is why I wrote God Save the Queens. This right here is the beating heart of the book, not just the disrespect, not just the erasure, but the question that sits in so many of our spirits. Who will ever respect you? Right? This is why God Save the Queens exists, to document what the mainstream often refuses to say, you are not alone, you are not invisible. Kathy's decision to write this book is resistance and it's sacred. Mhm. All right, hold a second. Um, Angela Davis has this quote, radical simply means grasping things at the roots. That applies to really any facet of society, from politics to religion, film, music, art, gender, whatever. It's the notion that the pearls will be clutched if you dig into the deepest underbelly of whatever it is you aim to transform and fuck it up from the inside out. Sometimes it's for the good, other times not so much. That was essentially what women have done from the start with hip hop. The problem, and for all intents and purposes, let's call it a problem. What's up, Tony? It's so good to see you, my love. Was that hip hop in its purest form was radical in and of itself. In the late 70s and early 80s, no one had a clue what to make of hip hop as a genre, let alone a culture. Throwing women into the mix so early was seen more as a liability than an asset. So now you're posing a threat by being radical, being a radical within a radical. In 1982, journalist and Beat Street story writer Stephen Hager used the term hip hop in an article about Africa Bambaataa for the Village Voice, RIP, validating the idea in print and calling it by name. 2 years later, we would meet Roxanne Shante. There were heavy sprinkles of women in the space prior to that, but Shante was a radical rapper. She had no qualms about challenging anyone, male or female, while still embraces no less. But to jump on in as the whole hip hop culture was still grappling with being seen as rebellious, read radical, art, was seen as a rebellious red radical art form, while still gaining the respect of the masses, was a bold move that was met with significant pushback from any man who felt they deserved the clout Shantae was acquiring, especially when she was gaining radio airplay when most male hip hop artists weren't. More on that later. Okay, so the idea of being a radical within a radical hits deep. Hip hop itself was a radical act, and I think that it's still a radical act. And women entering the space, it wasn't welcomed, it was viewed as a threat. But I think as we know and as we read in this book, women have always been there from the beginning. And I'll continue to say this, were and still are the architects in many ways. So Kathy shows us that from Shantae to Nikki to Cardi to Lauren, the same patterns of pushback persist. But what also persists? Courage, creativity, uh, continuation. Women keep showing up. Women keep building even when the system makes it hard as hell. Um, Let me find my spot. Hold up. This book is so juicy. If you're reading along with me at home, we are on page 13, paragraph. Hold a second. Give me a second. Actually, maybe we actually were on page 12. Give me a second. I'm so excited. Okay. Great. So now we're 3.5 decades removed from the start of the narrative, and this was written a while back. At this point, we are over 50 years, 5 decades removed. But so now I'll say now we're 5 decades removed from the start of that narrative, and sometimes it feels like nothing has changed. I'm typing this as I scan photos of Cardi B with a knot over her eye from being elbowed by Nicki Minaj's security guard during New York's fall 2018 Fashion Week. Cardi threw her very expensive shoe in protest, a signature move of hers since her Love and Hip Hop New York days. Their marketing driven battle would later continue, one questioning the other on everything from having rhymes ghostwritten to accusations of payola, questionable chart positions, and tour dollars diminishing. Plus, the peanut gallery's question of whether there can ever be more than one woman at the top. Still, only with women it's considered the Regina George complex. The villainous mean girl can't accept another woman on the scene, so every move is strategic and calculated with the sole intent of sabotage and successful solitude. This is far from new, and you'll learn within these pages just how similar Queen's native Nicki Minaj is to her predecessor, fellow Queen's native Roxanne Shante. The top is only lonely when you want more people beside you. Hold a second. Whew. All right. So this is such a nuanced unpacking of the way the industry manufactures competition between women. Cardi versus Nicki, Foxy versus Kim, um, Shantae versus Sparky D. But Kathy flips the lens. Maybe the top is lonely not because we can't work together, but because the systems don't want us to, right? Because would it behoove the systems if women did like a big fire link up? And we do. It's not just if we did, we constantly do. And you've seen that over time, which she also talks about in the book. Um, this part made me think deeply about how much potential is lost when we're pitted against each other, which we know as being, internalized oppression. And this is true in hip hop, and it's also true. We can look out right now in politics, and in society and see where that's happening. There's enough room for all of us when we build our own tables, right? So instead of being like, oh no, there's only one seat at the table, it's like, maybe let's just build a bigger table. All right. Ooh wee. So now we are on page 13. All right. When Cardi B addressed the whole situation over Instagram, which will probably go down in infamy despite the post now being deleted from social media, she had this to say to Nicki Minaj. You're out here fucking up your legacy looking like a fucking hater. Fucking up her legacy? There's some merit to that statement, though not necessarily due to the extent of the damage Nicki caused, but because there was an attempt at all there was an attempt at all to make waves when, as women, our space is designed to be soundproof. We whine, we complain, we're too emotional, perpetually in a state of PMS, so they say. Never mind the countless grown men who retaliate with words, fists, and at times far worse to get both their pain and point across. And when any of this is brought up, we're playing the gender card. With all that going on, how can any women get along? Some do, and that's great, but many don't. And what I've learned from writing this book is that some sadly never have, while others viewed it as a sisterhood of commonality with one singular cause in mind, to just keep going. Hold a second, hold a second. Okay. Woo-wee. Okay, y'all, we're in the home stretch. You ready? It would have been really great to write this prologue about how cool it is that women in hip hop have emerged from the ashes and reinvented the wheel hand in hand, or at least side by side. We know better than that, though. The scenery has certainly changed. Gone are those basement jams where women lyrically slapbox the shit out of each other and their male peers. Now there are shoe flinging fights at one of the biggest fashion events of the year with security present. There are also Dolce and Gabbana gowns in attendance, which used to be the fantastical fodder of Lil Kim and Foxy Brown lyrics circa 96 through 98. These days, designers are a dime a dozen and come frequently to the doorsteps of the top tier women in rap, Lil Kim still being among them. We could call that progress, but we'd be lying to an extent. What does it mean if the baddest women on the planet can't get along? Maybe a peace treaty between Cardi B and Nicki Minaj will be announced by the time you're reading this. That's so deep. But since we're still waiting for Foxy Brown and Lil Kim to release Thelma and Louise, y'all remember that project? I wouldn't hold my breath. This book has taken on so many forms since I started writing it because as hip hop continues to grow in strength, in numbers, and in power, its evolution has been rapid. Regardless of who hates whom, there are many women's success stories. It's a it's a change from the historically slim collection of girls who would decorate the regions of hip hop music, typically appearing one per crew. These shifts make it nearly impossible to create one linear history of the 40 plus, then now 50 plus years that women have touched all corners of the world with their raps. We could list them one by one, like Vibe did in 2001 with their Hip Hop Divas book, but someone would be excluded who deserved to be there. And that would be unfair to even the female rappers who contributed on the smallest scales. Progress is progress. What I learned from the stories contained within this book was that the people may change, but the circumstances remain the same. How they handle those circumstances is the real plot twist. I learned things I never imagined I would when I started this journey. I thought I could write this book with my eyes closed. After all, I too was a woman in hip hop and had my own set of stories. I couldn't have been more wrong. My stories are completely different from those of the women presented in this work. Beyond just my not being a rapper, the most primary distinction is that I'm white. But as Bahamadia once told me, that didn't matter. You're still a woman, she said. That alone puts you at a disadvantage. And she's right, though I will never be one to step to Black and brown women and say, "Am I right, ladies?" Because my struggles pale in comparison to theirs, pun intended. And I will never claim otherwise. But yes, I'm still at a disadvantage. And as a writer for nearly 2 decades, I wanted to contribute to the history of my gender in hip hop. This book has been a long time coming. Years back, another writer and I attempted to write a book that discussed women's contributions to rap, but it never fully solidified. The world simply wasn't ready. I was, though, and I vividly remember the moment when I knew definitively that I was going to write a book on the subject one day. It was at that radio station as I packed up my office. The greatest question is, how do you backtrack over 45 years to tell the full story of how women not only musically contributed to what has now become a widespread phenomenon, but also how they pioneered it from day one? The answer is you try your hardest, especially when history has it all wrong and those blurbs to which women have been relegated in hip college textbooks and coffee table books barely skim the surface. Mm. This is a collection of stories, a compilation of moments bound together, not just to form a linear history, but rather a greater understanding of just how impactful women were and still are to the evolution of hip hop. I found as many women as I could who were willing to talk, and some men who helped along the way. And I simply pressed record. Since covering women in hip hop has been my primary beat for nearly 20 years, I also dug back into my archives from interviews, conversations, concerts, and even friendships. It took the 35 years since Roxanne Shante dropped her prolific Roxanne's Revenge. Remember, this was written a while back for the book to actually happen. I'm honored to be the one who wrote it. God Saves the Queen. Sorry. God Save the Queens isn't a female rap encyclopedia or a listicle book of facts. It's a narrative homage to all the women in hip hop from all facets of the game who have pioneered movements and opened doors that were previously shut and locked. They've weathered storms through all different climates and eras, often without any credit or proper recognition. This book is for them. It is for us, for the women who grasped hip hop by the roots in order to make that radical shift from day one and all the days thereafter. Because contrary to popular belief, the ladies have always been first. And the story goes a little something like this. Yeah, right? This is dope. So, mm, that last line in the story goes a little something like this. It's hip hop, it's classic, it's spiritual. It reminds me that this is not just a book, it's a cipher, um, a cultural mixtape, a sacred tradition captured in print. And Kathy acknowledges that no single book could contain every woman's story. And I think that that's important. Um, I think of hip hop as a culture of the people. And what that means is that, like, I was just talking to a friend about it this earlier today. She's from Queens originally, and I was like, "Yo, I want to actually interview you because it's dope to interview MCs and DJs, folks who are keepers of the four elements, folks who have notoriety, folks who are getting started, but it's also like we all have a relationship, or many of us have a relationship with hip hop at this point across the globe. Um, and so I thought it was dope that she really acknowledges that the book couldn't contain every woman's story because you don't have enough time in your lifetime to learn the names of every single woman in hip hop. We're everywhere, and to me, we all deserve respect and dignity and honor. And I feel like that's why I consider myself to be like a scholar, someone studying and learning about hip hop. The more I learn about hip hop, the more I realize, like, dang, I've just brushed the surface, right? And so I love learning about us on in all the different corners of the planet. But this book gathers what it can with care, like I said, with nuance, with context, and with mad respect. So we've come to the part of this series where I pose some questions to y'all, and I really want y'all to chew on it. Hit me up in the comments. What did you learn from this prologue? Okay. That women are not only disrespected, but often dismissed in the spaces that we help build within hip hop. That proximity to hip hop doesn't guarantee you safety. Even loving the culture deeply doesn't shield you from its shadows. That writing it down, even when no one wants to hear it, is resistance and it's legacy work. That hip hop's radical origin includes women, not as accessories, but as architects. And here's what I want you to think about until next week and until next episode. Who are some women in hip hop who have documented our culture, not just performed in it? Big shout out to Tony Blackman, who came through and blessed the space. Um, what untold stories need to be brought into the light? And what is your story with hip hop, right? What's your history? Where do you enter the cipher? It's something to think about. And like I said earlier, like I'm a bookworm, I'm a I'm a writer. I've been writing songs and oh, real yes, real life Banksy says, I've learned that I wasn't tripping as I was working towards sharing my art. So dope. Soul Butter says, you Tony Blackman says, facts. Yeah, talk to me. Pop it down in the comments. And when I post this, post your thoughts because people need to hear this. People need to chew on this. And we don't need it to be up in neon lights or put in a documentary or written in a high status magazine for it to be significant and valuable. And those things will happen and will continue to happen, but the media isn't where it starts. It starts with us because we are the culture. Um, but what I want to go back to is this question: what is your story with hip hop, and where do you enter the cipher, and the importance of authenticity, right? I've always been a bookworm. As soon as I learned how to read, I had my nose in the books, because it was something that I could understand how to do. I struggle with math. Um, been a writer, you know what I'm saying, putting together rhymes as soon as I really got my first journal and my pen. And, you know, um, I'm a bit of a square, like a bit of a nerd, and I've always been passionate about the complete liberation of all people. I said it earlier, but I'm just saying it again. So like that's what you hear in my raps, right? You hear me telling stories of my life, you hear me telling stories of what I see, you hear political and social analysis, although sometimes limited. You hear me talking about emotional and spiritual elevation and healing. That's because it's who I am, right? So where do you enter the cipher? And understand that you don't necessarily have to be an MC, a DJ, a graph artist, a break dancer to be a part of this cipher. Okay. And don't DM me for this. Drop your thoughts, like I said, in the comments once I post the clip. Hip hop is a call and response, as y'all know. So this is a conversation. Um, Banksy says being a nerd is a beautiful thing. Yes, it is. Um, as always, like I love to say, hip hop is a conversation. So what the fuck is you saying? What are you saying? Right? Um, one time my father asked me that question, what are you saying? I was talking about sexism and misogyny in hip hop and criticizing particular male rappers. And he was like, yeah, but what are you saying? And at first I was just like, man, my father's being so sexist. Like, what the hell? Why is he asking me that? Like, why won't he take what I'm saying seriously? But eventually, after he kept saying, well, what are you saying? What are you saying? What are you saying? I was like, oh, like, I don't want to fill my mouth with what these other people are saying, or even necessarily my commentary and frustration with what they're saying. What's my contribution to the cipher? What's my perspective? What world do I want to see? How do I sharpen my bars, right? How do I get ready so that when it's time to step into the cipher, my sword is sharp, right? What the fuck am I saying? Hip hop is a conversation, so what the fuck is you saying? And as always, tag other women in hip hop who inspire you so I can learn from their brilliance too. So that was a lot and it was important. Massive love and gratitude to Kathy Iandoli for telling the truth and speaking truth to power with precision and humility. Um, oh, hey, La Jefakita. I entered hip hop in church, did not even know it, listening to Kirk Franklin. Yes, yes, that's right. God's Property, which one of those songs, Stomp, featured, I believe it was Salt from Salt and Pepper, right? I remember that song. I remember it in 98 in my dad's girlfriend's Ford Explorer and, hearing Stomp and hearing Salt rap. When I think about the goodness and the fullness and the goodness of God, make me grateful, make me thankful, pity the hateful, I'm grateful. The Lord brought me through this far, trying to be cute while I praise him, raise him high, I keep it live, be bumping, right? I remember that shit. Okay, hold up. So, like I said, big shout out to Kathy Iandoli. If this episode moved you, go buy the book. All right, y'all. Borrow it, share it, request it at your library, right? God Save the Queens is a book that we all need to sit with, because the knowledge in these pages is power, and power multiplies when it's shared. I think particularly with what's going on right now, with the current presidential administration, reading books and sharing books is an act of resistance. Next week on Women in Hip Hop Wednesdays, I have an incredible guest that I can't wait for y'all to meet. I'm not going to announce her just yet. And let me know if you think we should pick a weekly read aloud time for this book. Initially, I said that I would read it once a month, but I'm like, this is moving too slow. Like, we're going to be on this book for another year and a half if we move like that. So I'm considering maybe reading it every other week, or finding like one day a week different than Wednesdays so we could really get through this. So let me know if you want to get with the book club. Um, but yeah, I wanted to um yeah, next Herstory in the pages, we're going to be reading chapter 1, which is Girls to the I mean, this is part 1, excuse me. Chapter 1 is The Bronx is Burning, and part 1, Girls to the Front. But I wanted to start here with Kathy's story, because understanding the why behind this book makes everything else hit different, in my opinion. And remember, I'm not the author. This is a book by Kathy Iandoli, but I am a dope Black feminist rapper who is obsessed with learning hip hop history. So I'll see y'all next time. Keep building, keep questioning, keep writing. What's up, Ian? We are about to sign off, but I will post this so you can check it out. And keep showing up for this legacy. I love y'all. For real, for real.